This is part 16 of A Wolf Amongst Lions by Kallypso. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy, and subscribe for future stories. Please check the description for a full list of tags and the link to drop a kudos for the original author. With that out of the way, let's continue. Chapter 88, The Lion and the Dragon. It was a strange thing, having a Targaryen back in the Red Keep. Years ago, Tywin had helped to wipe out the bloodline of the dragons. He knew, of course, that Rhaella's 2 youngest children had fled across the sea, but they were not a concern to him. What could 2 children do without an army? It was some concern when Daenerys Targaryen was wed to a powerful Dothraki horse lord, but even then, the Dothraki had never crossed the narrow sea and were unlikely to change that anytime soon. When word came that Viserys Targaryen had died, that seemed to put the issue to rest. One Targaryen girl alone did not have a chance of taking back the Iron Throne. Tywin had been very wrong about that. In the span of a few years, the girl had hatched 3 dragons, gained an army greater than perhaps any other in the world, and set Slavers Bay aflame. If Tywin had treated her as a threat sooner, he could have sent some assassin across the sea. Not a faceless man. Their price for her life was too steep, but some clever sell sword perhaps. It was too late now. It had been too late ever since she set foot in Westeros. Now, he had to contend this new Targaryen just as he had contended with her father decades ago, and this one would not be so easily put down. In appearance, Daenerys Targaryen favoured her mother, at least from what Tywin could remember. They had the same silvery white hair, violet eyes and delicate facial features, but her flair for the dramatic, that was a trait that came entirely from her father. If Aerys had a dragon, he would have flown it to every possible meeting just to remind people of his name and power. Tywin was grateful that the dragons had died out long before Aerys ever took the throne. There were other similarities too. Even when Aerys was young, he was prone to making grand speeches and claims with no real foundation. When he had taken the throne and named Tywin as his hand, it was Tywin who had to remind him that he had to, on occasion, deliver on his great plans and promises. "You worry too much, my friend," Aerys often laughed back when he still had some good humour. "I always find a way." Or you forget entirely when you move on to the next venture. "I don't forget, I just find better things with which to occupy my time. I don't have time for the trivial matters, that's your job." Aerys often did not realise that those trivial matters were vital to keeping stability in the realm. He had the mind of a dragon too high up in the clouds to see anything happening on the ground. Daenerys Targaryen seemed the same, based on her entrance to the dragon pit. And also, like her father, the woman was an open book. Every emotion showed clear upon her face, and she gave away her hand too easily. If she was patient, she would have let Tyrion speak for her and held back so that she could read the room. Instead, she had leapt into the fray the first chance she had. That impulsiveness and emotional honesty had made Aerys a poor negotiator, and Tywin had conducted important meetings whenever possible during his time as hand. But Aerys' daughter at least had some care for the lives of others. She wanted to be loved by the people, not simply feared and obeyed. She did not want to reduce the country to ashes, even though she pretended that she was willing to do so. If she could find a peaceful path, she would take it, so long as it did not make her look weak. Tywin was not surprised when the Dragon Queen took up his offer to meet separately. He expected that she would take the chance to negotiate with him as opposed to the dozens of other angry lords. When she entered the room, she had hardened her face to stone, yet he could see the light of hate in her eyes. "Apparently you wish to speak alone," she said coolly. "I did." Tywin grasped a pitcher from across the table and poured wine into 2 goblets. "I find negotiations are easier between 2 people than 20. "Perhaps if you had more control over your subjects, it would not be so difficult," Daenerys said. "I have control," Tywin said. "They quieted when I told them to, did they not?" He extended a goblet of wine to her and she scrutinized it skeptically. He raised his eyebrows. "It isn't poisoned." "Why should I trust that claim? I would not put such tactics past you," Daenerys said. "You're a treacherous man." "A treacherous man perhaps, but not a fool," Tywin said. "If I poisoned you, your unsullied guards would kill me where I stand, and your armies would run wild across the country." She accepted the goblet slowly but did not drink. "Perhaps you could use a slow-acting poison." "Perhaps I could." Tywin sipped some of the wine himself. "You may drink it or you may not, it makes no difference to me." She hesitated for a moment longer before sipping the wine. Then she glanced to her unsullied guards. "Wait outside." They nodded and departed, closing the door behind them. Only then did Daenerys turn back to look at him. If you have so much control over the lords, why did you allow them to argue for so long? It was devolving into madness. Yes, it was, but there were many grievances to be shared, Tywin said. Her eyes narrowed when she studied him. You wanted it to fall apart, so that you had a chance to call this meeting and negotiate for yourself. I don't control the thoughts and feelings of the lords and ladies of Westeros, he said, nor can I control what they say. No, but I'm sure you reminded them of their grievances with my family, Daenerys said, so that they would be properly angry when I arrived. It did not take much reminding, Tywin said. Your father was hated and is still hated. Many who remember him are still alive. Like you, Daenerys said flatly. Yes, Tywin said, like me. I don't remember him or my mother, I'm afraid, Daenerys said. My brother and I were forced from Dragonstone when I was a baby. If any Lannister or Baratheon men found us, we would have been killed. Now all I know is the stories. She swirled the wine in her goblet. And who knows? Perhaps they were sensationalized to strengthen the Baratheon claim to the throne. Maybe you all claimed my father was a madman to make yourselves look like heroes. I don't believe I have been considered a hero once in my life, Tywin said. The stories are not myths. If they were, you would have had much less trouble with the lords just outside. And as you say, you did not know your father. I knew him very well. I imagine you did, Daenerys said. It's ironic, isn't it? You were the hand of the king to my father, and now your son is my hand. She wanted to get a rise out of him, Tywin could tell, but he was well used to suppressing his personal feelings when necessary. Tyrion did a decent enough job managing Joffrey, who was not a very good king. If you are any sort of decent ruler, he should have an easier time. His tone was such that it implied she might not be, and it made Daenerys' brow knit with irritation, but she did not rise to his bait either. Tyrion became my hand because he seems to think I will be good for Westeros. That's his judgment, Tywin said. I haven't made mine yet. If your judgment is so flawless, why did you ever become my father's hand? Daenerys asked. Surely you would want to distance yourself from such a mad man. Aerys wasn't born mad, Tywin said. His affliction developed slowly over time and grew worse with age. No one would have guessed what he would become when he first assumed the throne. The smallest spark of worry passed through the young queen's eyes. Perhaps she had not known that about her father, and if it was age that made him mad, who was to say the same would not happen to her? He showed no signs when he was younger. Well, he was proud and impulsive, but that was a trait of most Targaryen rulers, Tywin said. See, that is why no one in that pit is certain of you. You're still young. Even if you are mentally sound now, they do not know what you will become, and you have dragons. It's a blessing that the Mad King did not have those. For a moment she did not respond. She faced the window, gripping tight to her cup, but when she turned back to face him, her expression was strong again. The dragons are exactly why I hold all of the cards in this negotiation, she said. They are the best weapon against the Night King and his armies. You need me and my forces in the battle against the undead if you want to have any hope of winning. I said before that you rely too heavily on your dragons, and I meant it, Tywin said. They are not invincible. Daenerys' eyes narrowed. They nearly are, that's enough. Is it? Tywin asked. Where is your third dragon? She hesitated, only a fraction of a second, but it was enough to invalidate the words that left her mouth next. He's guarding my fleet. There was no need to. You're lying, Tywin said. You flew north to see the army of the dead yourself. I noticed that you were a bit mute on that trip during the meeting. You lost your third dragon there. Daenerys' jaw clenched, and she did not respond. Tywin exhaled, packing to the window. How did it happen? I don't. You've greatly complicated our situation with this mistake, Tywin said. If the army of the dead is able to kill dragons, we need to know how. A javelin, she said softly. We were caught in a thick bank of clouds and could not see, so we flew lower to get a glimpse of the army. The Night King was waiting, as if he knew exactly where we would appear. She shook her head. Still, it should have been impossible. No dragon has ever been felled in such a way. And no dead man has walked in 8,000 years. You should have been prepared for such a trap, Tywin said. You were overconfident about the strength of your dragons, and you lost one. Now the dead have a dragon as part of their army, which means he can cover greater distances, wreak more devastation, and even fly to Essos to destroy the people there once he's done with Westeros. We don't know he has my dragon, Daenerys said, but her voice was softer now, weakened by doubt and grief and perhaps even guilt for her blunder. He sank into an icy lake. The Night King might not be able to. He will, Tywin said. I have no idea how that cursed magic works, but I'm sure the Night King will find a way. The Dragon Queen did not reply. In truth, though this mistake of hers could be disastrous for Westeros, it was extremely ideal for him. He had not dreamed, in all of his planning, that Daenerys Targaryen would lose one of her dragons, and to the army of the dead no less. Tywin turned to face her again. It really is a shame for you. You had a lot of power in this negotiation, but now you've given a destructive weapon to an enemy that could wipe out the whole of Westeros. It's possible you've doomed the very people you claim to protect. That was not my intention. No, of course not, but it's the truth all the same. Perhaps you should focus on correcting your mistake before you demand the loyalty of the people. Daenerys' lip curled slightly. Yes, perhaps I should. And when the army of the dead is defeated, what then? I suppose it will be war between us, and as long as I have even one dragon, I will have an advantage. I have larger armies that are better rested and more trained than the majority of your soldiers. I know your numbers. You cannot beat me in a fight. No, you're right, Tywin said, and the admission seemed to surprise her. She had clearly expected him to insist that they would prevail. You will likely win, however, the cost of a victory will be steep. He circled the table. You recall what Olenna Tyrell said at the pit, about the number of families we have on our side. I recall, Daenerys said. And you remember what Sansa Tyrell said as well, the red-headed girl, Tywin said. She brought up the rather important issue of food at the onset of winter. Yes, I remember that as well, Daenerys said. Good, Tywin said. Then you know what would happen if you insisted on meeting us in war. You may win, but you would burn many a great house to the ground and set the fields aflame, just in time for this new winter to set in. The people would starve, the ashes would fall like snow, and you would be queen of a graveyard. The history books would not paint a pretty picture of you then. Aegon and his sister burned many a house to the ground as well, Daenerys reminded him. The history books were kind enough to them. Out of fear, Tywin said. Who would criticize the family who still had dragons? The histories say that the people danced in the streets when Aegon was crowned king and worshipped him like he was a god. But most were just praying for a stop to the blaze. The kings of old did not kneel out of loyalty. They kneeled because if they didn't, they would lose everything. Fear united the 7 kingdoms, not loyalty or awe. Daenerys fell silent at this, taking a moment to drink her wine again. This time she took more than a sip. She knew she was standing on shaky ground in this debate. I don't believe you want to be Queen of the Ashes, Tywin said. If you did, you never would have agreed to this meeting. You want the people to see you as a saviour, not a butcher. Why else would you have spent so much time in Essos freeing slaves? Because it was the right thing to do, Daenerys said. And so is helping Westeros win this war without asking for a crown in return, Tywin pointed out. Maybe it is, Daenerys said. But when that war is won, what if I receive nothing but hatred and fear in return for my efforts, and my armies will be weakened and easier for you to kill? Fighting a war with no guarantee of a reward is an excellent way to change the minds of the lords in the pit. And of all the people, Tywin said, words mean very little to Westeros. They've heard enough lies and broken promises that they know better than to take anyone by their word. Actions speak much louder. She paused, and Tywin could see her considering the thought. In the end, she wasn't so different from Robert Baratheon. They both wanted to be seen as the hero of a good story, while others took on the role of villain. Tywin had played the role of the villain for Robert once, and Robert had accepted it, losing not one night of sleep over the dead Targaryen children. Daenerys Targaryen did not want to burn the country and be reviled for such a deed. She wanted a peaceful surrender so that she could play the hero. Tywin was giving her a chance to earn that. I assure you I'm in no hurry to fight a war with you once we handle the dead. If we handle the dead, Tywin continued. If there is a peaceful solution to all of this, I mean to find it, but all roads to peace lead through me. Is that a threat? Daenerys asked. A promise, Tywin said. The word of a Lannister means nothing to me, Daenerys said. If that's the case, I suggest you pick a different hand, Tywin said. Fine then, it's your word specifically that means nothing, Daenerys said. You once promised help to my father, and when he opened the gates you sacked King's Landing and killed many innocent people. Perhaps my father was an evil man, I'll accept that, but my niece and nephew, my sister-in-law, none of them were evil, and you had your man kill them anyway. What would it say about me if I let you survive once I take the throne? It would tell the world that I do not care about justice. Tywin knew she would come to this point eventually. There was no way she could justify letting him live after all, not with her Dornish allies, not with her love of appearing just, but at the very least, her blunder with the dragon had allowed him to buy time. We can worry about justice once our survival is assured. Daenerys was quiet for a long time, staring at the table between them in deep contemplation. Tywin waited patiently in the silence, already knowing how she would answer. I must discuss this with my generals and allies, Daenerys said at last. I won't make a hasty decision without consulting them. Tywin nodded once. It was a smart play, and it was possible some might argue against the truce, but the Dornish had reason to be worried about the dead if the rest of the Seven Kingdoms perished in the coming winter, and the rogue dragon was a threat to the rest of Daenerys' armies even if they hid away on their islands. Consult with your people then. We'll return to the Dragon Pit, and you will guarantee a truce and your help against the Night King. The nature of said help you will discuss with your advisers. I can convince the lords and ladies of Westeros to wait until tomorrow morning for a full answer. Daenerys considered this for a moment longer, finishing her drink as she did. Then she set it down with a sharp clack, straightening. Yes, tomorrow morning will be sufficient, but whatever answer I give there will be final. Naturally, Tywin thought, she cannot be seen as malleable if she is to be an effective ruler. Daenerys opened the door and her unsullied guards stood at attention, but she paused before she left, looking back at him. It's interesting. From the stories I would not expect you to be a man who pursues peace. I pursue whatever I must for my family, Tywin said. If I believed ruthlessness would win my house the day, I would gladly take that path. No doubt, Daenerys inclined her head. In that case, I'm very glad for my large armies and dragons. She left then and Tywin lingered for a long moment in the silence of the room. The negotiations had gone well, better than expected. He had not yet been forced to play his most desperate card. It was only a matter of time, of course. Circumstances, Daenerys' allies, and the Dragon Queen herself would force his hand before this was over. Just as well. Whatever happened, Tywin would ensure a future for House Lannister. Arya waited restlessly in the silence, flipping one of her knives in her hand. Every lord and lady in the pit was nervous, shifting from foot to foot, packing about the pit, talking to each other in low voices. Then at last Daenerys returned, and Tywin followed shortly afterward. They returned to their seats and Arya hurried back to Tywin's side. What happened? She asked. Did it go well? Tywin did not answer, but rather indicated Daenerys, who was stepping back to the centre of the pit. I understand that none of you trust me, Daenerys said, and I cannot earn trust with words alone. If I wish to be a queen, I will have to act as one and protect my people. She looked to Tywin. I will agree to a truce until the threat to the north is dealt with, and I wish to offer my help, but the nature and extent of that help I must first discuss with my advisers. A murmur went up amongst the crowd, one of confusion but also of relief. Arya saw Jon slowly relax. Margaery seemed sceptical, but she did not protest. Daenerys' allies, however, looked especially concerned. Tyrion most of all. He was looking from Daenerys to his father with wide eyes, probably wondering what exactly Tywin had said to convince her to set aside her demands for now. The crown accepts your truce, Tywin said, and whatever help you deign to give, we expect an answer by morning. There is little time to prepare. You'll have your answer, Daenerys said, her voice steady and calm. Then she turned and signalled to her people to follow her. They did with little pause. Only Oberyn glanced back over his shoulder, scrutinizing Tywin like he might a particularly dangerous spider. Tyrion lingered for a few moments longer, looking just as doubtful, but then he hastened to follow after the Dragon Queen. The other lords and ladies rose and began to depart. Margaery glanced at Tywin before she left. So, negotiations went well then. Better than expected, Tywin replied. Her help isn't a guarantee yet. Some of her allies don't trust me to be honourable in any arrangement. But if she doesn't help, nearly all of Westeros will resent her for it, Margaery said, smoothing down her skirts. She'll give us her assistance. She's the type who desperately wants people to love her, even if she tries to hide it. Tywin inclined his head, silently agreeing to the point. Arya lingered next to Tywin as most of the others departed, waiting until everyone but Jaime was out of earshot to speak. Why did negotiations go better than expected? Because the Dragon Queen lost a dragon, Tywin said. You must have noticed that only 2 arrived today. Arya's brow furrowed. I did, but I thought it might be elsewhere. I'm sorry, how do you lose a dragon? Jaime asked. To the White Walkers, apparently, Tywin said. This supposed Night King has the strength to take down a full-grown dragon with a javelin. I blamed the young queen for the potential destruction of Westeros, and it seemed to move her. So the negotiations went well, Jaime said, but our situation is worse because now both of our major enemies have dragons. And the North will be the first in danger if the Night King can use that dragon to cross the wall, Arya said. Her heart raced even thinking about a dragon flying over Winterfell. Her mother was still there and all of Robb's children. It will be, Tywin agreed. Tell your brother to send a raven north and begin evacuating as many people as possible. I won't give the Night King more soldiers because we failed to act quickly. Tell him about the dragon, but make sure he tells no one else. We don't want to start a panic until we have Daenerys Targaryen's sure support. And what if she doesn't give us her sure support? Jaime asked. What if her allies convince her to let us rot? They won't, Tywin said, and he sounded sure. But Arya could not imagine why. In her mind, their situation grew more difficult by the day, and the realm was teetering on the brink between destruction by fire and destruction by ice. It did not seem a question of whether or not they would survive, but rather what kind of end they would meet. The tension on Daenerys' flagship was nearly too much for Tyrion to handle. No one had spoken yet against Daenerys' decision, but all of them had doubts plain on their faces. The Dothraki came for war, not for peace. Ser Jorah and Ser Barristan did not trust Tywin Lannister to hold to any promises or bargains. The Greyjoys and the Dornish wanted their revenge. None wanted to set aside a war against Tywin Lannister for a truce. After all, his father was a much more comfortable enemy to face than a king made of ice and thousands of years of fury. I know you all have doubts about my decision, Daenerys spoke at last, but I cannot abandon Westeros to their fate and expect them to follow me. Especially after my mistake in the north, a truce is not enough. If I wish for them to see me as a queen, I must be prepared to fight for them. You may fight for them, yes, Jorah said, but they may give you nothing in return for it. More likely, they will use you for your men and cling to their power once the war is done. And if they do, I will punish them for it, Daenerys said, but I cannot withhold my help simply because I might not receive anything in return. She looked to Missandei, who stood to her right side. Why did you follow me? I offered to send you home to Narth, but you stayed by my side. Why? Because you saved me, your grace, Missandei murmured. And you, Grey Worm, Daenerys turned to the leader of the Unsullied. Why did you continue to fight for me even after I promised that you could go as a free man? Because you fought for us and freed us, Grey Worm said. Then I must fight for the people here, Daenerys said. Forgive me, your grace, but it is not the same in Westeros, Yara spoke up. These are free men who made their choices. The lords chose, maybe, but not the small folk, Daenerys said. They will suffer the most if the enemy to the north is allowed to roam free. You're right, Oberyn said, and you are kind to care about the small folk, but Tywin Lannister does not. He does not care about anyone but himself. If you play a fair game, he will repay you with treachery. He cannot be trusted. My father is ruthless, Tyrion said. There is no denying that, but not without purpose. He's never cruel for the sake of being cruel. There's usually a motive, a goal. In fact, he is only cruel for the sake of being cruel when it comes to me, Tyrion thought, but did not say. And what was the aim of slaughtering my family? Oberyn asked. To endear himself to the new King Robert, Tyrion said, and to rid Westeros of Targaryens so that none could claim the throne but the Baratheons. Forgive me, there is no justification for what happened to your sister or your niece and nephew, but in my father's eyes it did have a purpose. He looked back to Daenerys. He has made peace with his enemies before, with the Starks and the Tyrells. Both fought him once and now both argued in his favour in the pit today. It's not impossible that he might try to make peace with you. He made peace with the Starks and the Tyrells because they knelt, Yara pointed out. Our queen will do no such thing. Yes, because she has very large armies and dragons, Tyrion said. My father knows that. He won't throw himself into a war he can't win. It's not in his nature. So you believe he does want to make peace, Daenerys said, and that this isn't a trick. Tyrion gritted his teeth together. Gods, he could not believe he was defending his father at all. I don't know for sure, but it is a possibility. And if he does make peace, Oberyn asked, turning back to Daenerys, what then? If he makes peace and bows to you, would you let him go free, after what he did to your kin? I did not say that, Daenerys said. I did not promise him any pardons. I promised him a truce until the threat to the north is dealt with. Tywin Lannister will receive justice for his crimes, as I promised, but for now he is not the priority. Survival is the priority, for all of us. She's right, Sir Barristan said. If the dead kill every lord in that pit and all of their people and armies, we will never defeat them. To withhold our help would be folly. I do not trust Tywin Lannister either, but the very fact that he is asking for help says that he fears this threat, as any wise man would. Daenerys nodded once. I will offer my support to the people of Westeros, along with my dragons, until the northern threat is defeated. If you wish to withdraw your support and retreat, you may, but my decision is final. We would never withdraw from a fight, Grey Worm said firmly. We are with you, against the north and against these lords if they are treacherous. Daenerys' Dothraki general spoke up in his own tongue, but it was clearly an affirmative yes to her commands. She gave both of her commanders a grateful smile. Yara looked down at the table, frustrated but no less determined. You accepted me and my people when he fled our home, and you've promised to give it back to us. Greyjoys don't run from a fight. We're with you. Daenerys looked to Prince Oberyn, who was twisting a ring around his finger, a bitter smile on his face. Our alliance is new, my queen, but we will support you in this war. He looked up at her. I will not pretend, of course, it is because of your Targaryen name. You see, your father said nasty things about my sister and her children because he did not believe them pure enough, and your brother humiliated and abandoned my sister for another. The history between the Targaryens and the Martells has always been complicated. Still, we put that aside and we followed you. Do you know why? Because you wish to see a just ruler on the throne, Daenerys murmured, and I promised justice for your enemies. Yes, Oberyn said, stepping back toward the cabin door, and that is the condition for our help. If you cannot promise us that, we will look elsewhere. Our situation has not changed, Prince Oberyn, Daenerys said. I vowed to be just and I will be. You have my word. Good, Oberyn said, opening the door. And you have my word that we will fight with you. Then he left the cabin. The others filed away soon after, and Tyrion made to follow, but Daenerys stopped him before he took a few steps. Stay, she said, I still need to speak with you. Tyrion exhaled and slowly closed the door, leaving them both alone. Yes, your grace. Daenerys circled back behind her desk and took a seat. How well do you know your father? I would like to think I know him well, Tyrion said, though we haven't been acquainted in the past few years on account of the exiling. But you truly think he would make peace, Daenerys said. Yes, Tyrion said, if it benefits him and our house. My father is capable of peace, and he's dealt with so many wars in the past few years. I think they are beginning to exhaust him. Daenerys folded her hands in her lap. I don't suppose he would make peace if he knew it meant his death. And does it, Tyrion murmured, without question. The Dornish won't accept anything less, Daenerys said, and I cannot show Westeros that I am willing to forgive any and all slights against my family, simply because the slighter assisted me in some way. No, I suppose not, Tyrion said. He supposed it shouldn't matter to him whether his father lived or died, not after all of these years of abuse and hatred, yet it did make him feel quite strange. I do wonder how to appease the others, of course, Daenerys said. Robb Stark clearly does not like me, nor does the current Queen Mother. The Tyrells and the North seem the most important parties to win over, so how do I do that? Actually, the problem with the Tyrells is one we can perhaps solve easily, Tyrion said. You told me once that you can't have children. Like it or not, this produces a succession crisis in the realm. But if you were to, say, name young Steffon Baratheon as your heir, perhaps Margaery Tyrell could be persuaded to see reason. My heir, Daenerys raised an eyebrow. Someone will eventually have to rule after you, though I hope you live a very long life, Tyrion said. Naming Steffon as your heir, it will ensure that Margaery can maintain her place in the court and pacify the Tyrells. It may also encourage Margaery to quietly do away with me whenever her son grows old enough to rule, Daenerys said. I do not know Margaery Tyrell well enough yet to give her such status. True enough, Tyrion said. It was frustrating that Daenerys so often avoided the topic of her heir when it was an important issue. There were many ways of choosing successors if a ruler did not have children. She just refused to decide on any of those ways. Daenerys did not like to think so far into the future. Tyrion hoped that might change once she had the crown. If we're speaking of gaining the loyalty of the Starks and the Tyrells, there is one person whose trust could benefit you. And who is that? Daenerys asked. My sister-in-law, Arya Lannister, Tyrion said. She's the younger sister of Robb Stark, the head of the Stark family. He once gave up northern independence to save her life, so he clearly cares for her. And she is the younger sister of Sansa Tyrell, married to the Tyrell heir Willers. Sansa clearly already has a great deal of influence in the Reach, given how she spoke at the pit. Tyrion drummed his fingers against the table. And of course, Arya has already gained some influence in the West through marriage to Jaime, and through her actions during the conflict with the rogue Greyjoys. She is also tied to the Riverlands through her mother, who was once a Tully. And she was a dear friend to my late nephew Tommen, so I assume she has a similarly friendly relationship with Margaery Baratheon. That's nearly all of the major regions who are against me, Daenerys said. Is she really so well connected? I wish I could say it was by accident, Tyrion said, but my father has been very wise with arranging marriages in the past several years. A Lannister married a Baratheon married a Tyrell married a Stark married a Lannister. They're all well connected. He sighed. Which brings us back to the beginning. My father will be instrumental in ensuring a peaceful transition. It seems he may be willing to give you that, but if you were to put him on trial, it would mean war. I can only deal with one war at a time, Daenerys murmured. This conflict with the dead consumes all of my attention. You did not see them, but I did. Their forces seem to stretch on for miles. I suppose if they kill us all, the future conflicts won't matter, Tyrion sighed. No, but let's assume that they will. Daenerys looked up from her hands. I want you to go to your father and deliver a message for me. Tyrion really would have rather not gone anywhere near his father, but he did not protest. And what's that? Tell him that I will give my full assistance in this war, all of my armies and my dragons. In exchange, he will guarantee me a peaceful transition onto the throne, Daenerys said. If he does not, I will burn his house to the ground. Tyrion swallowed hard. This seems to be a message that an envoy could deliver. Perhaps, Daenerys said, but I need you to do it, because I only trust you to read your father and tell me whether or not his intentions are false. Tyrion exhaled. Very well, my queen, I will go at once. He took a step back. You will not mind if I borrow a few unsullied guards. Daenerys gave him a small smile. No, and if anything happens to you, I promise you will be avenged. Tyrion nodded once. Thank you, your grace, that is comforting to know. Chapter 89, Counter-Offer. Arya went on a long search throughout the Red Keep to find Robb to warn him about the dragon. Eventually she found him in the garden, not alone, but with Bran and Jon as well. All three of her brothers had grouped together beside the snow-covered maze, talking in low voices. The anger on Robb's face was clear. Don't understand how that could happen, Robb said. How did she fall into such a trap? She wished to see the numbers of the dead, and she thought she would be safe in the air, Jon said. When the clouds came in, she went lower so that she could see. The Night King was waiting there, staring right at her, like he expected her to come. Arya stopped beside Jon. Are you talking about the dragon? Jon jumped a bit. Gods, Arya, you startled me. He shook his head. Yes, but keep your voice down. I was told not to speak of it. By the Dragon Queen, I expect, Arya said. It doesn't matter. Lord Tywin already deduced it. And Bran saw it happen through his ravens, Robb said. Now the Night King has a dragon at his disposal. This could doom us all, but especially the North, and Daenerys Targaryen told you to keep it a secret. I don't think she meant to keep it indefinitely, Jon said. Perhaps she meant to wait until after we bent the knee, Robb said. She should have known that your loyalty is to the North, not her. The North is why I came to find you, Arya said. Lord Tywin says you should send a raven at once to every house you can and tell them to evacuate south. We don't know how long we have until the dead cross the wall. With a dragon, I fear we've made it easier for him. We have, Bran murmured, and it won't be long now, he's nearly ready. Arya swallowed hard, looking to Jon. You never saw the White Walkers with javelins before. I saw them, but I thought they were just spears, Jon shook his head. I never thought that the White Walkers had such capabilities. They have good aim, yes, Bran said, but it's more than that. The Night King did know that she was coming, he saw it, he prepared. Saw it, Robb asked. He's a green seer like me, Bran said, rubbing his fingers across the clasp of his cloak. He can see through the eyes of animals, he can see into the past, He can see bits and pieces of the future, not as well as I can, but our magic comes from the same place, from the old gods and the children of the forest. He's just twisted into something darker. Robb let out a breath. So our enemy can see the future and our every move. No, not every move. He can't see this far south, not yet. Bran looked up at Robb. But you should listen to Arya, evacuate the north, all of the north, Winterfell as well. You want us to abandon Winterfell? Robb asked. Leave a small garrison if you must, but we will not have time to fortify it or to move every army north in time, and it is not large enough to contain the armies of Westeros, Bran said. Besides, the dead have not come to claim castles. They came to claim the living. If there are no living in the north to claim, they will keep moving. It will buy us some time to prepare a better defense. But wait, Arya said. You say that you can see the future. Does that mean? She was almost afraid to ask the next question. Do we have any hope of winning? Bran turned to look at her with eyes that seemed so very old and distant. I see bits and pieces. None of it is certain. I only know for sure that the wall will fall. What happens afterwards? There are many possibilities depending on how the Night King moves. We must be prepared for all of them. All right then. Arya turned to grasp Robb's arm. Go on, write to Mother, write to all of the lords as quickly as you can. She glanced at Jon. You should help him. The faster you all write the better. Jon swallowed hard, nodding. I'm sorry. I thought it would be wise to get a clear view of the Night King's numbers. I didn't expect. It doesn't matter now. It's done, Arya said. Do you have an estimate of his forces at least? Close to 200,000, Jon said, but it will grow if the wall falls. Not if we get everyone off the wall first, Arya said. Go, right, but don't tell any of them about the dragon. We don't want to cause any more of a panic. Robb nodded. You should tell Lord Tywin to include a space for Bran at any war council we have. We'll need him. I will, Arya said. Like Bran said, the future isn't set in stone. There is hope. We're going to find the future where we win. Her voice sounded strong, but she knew it was only masking the fear that she felt. Bran did not see certain death, but neither did he see certain success. If they made too many mistakes, everyone she loved would die in the winter. As she watched her brothers go, she felt herself shaking and the 3 fingers of her right hand twitched. Arya, Bran murmured, I have something for you. She turned and saw a dagger in his hand. It had the most beautiful dragon bone hilt, and when he pulled it from its sheath it gleamed in the light of the setting sun. Valyrian steel, it had to be. What is this? A dagger that was meant to kill me. A long time ago, Bran said. I'd like you to have it. I won't be able to use it against the dead, but you might. I already have a Valyrian steel weapon, Arya said. You'd be better off giving it to Robb. He won't need it, Bran said, and he's never practiced much with knives. Take it. Arya tentatively grasped the knife in her mangled fingers, pulling it close to her chest. Thank you, Bran, I'll keep it close. Be sure that you do, Bran said, and in his tone it felt like something of a warning. The last time Tyrion was in the offices of the Hand of the King, his father was sending him away to Essos to take the blame for a crime he did not commit. Strangely, the undeserved exile was something of a kindness coming from Tywin Lannister. He could have just as easily executed Tyrion for the crime. Then he would be rid of him forever. He wondered if his father regretted that small mercy now, that Tyrion had returned home with Daenerys Targaryen. Tyrion did not want to speak with his father alone. He did not want to climb the steps or step back into the room where so many arguments occurred. He did not want to look his father in the eye. It was only his pride as a Lannister that drove him forward, pride and spite. He did not want his father to have the pleasure of unsettling him. He knocked on the door twice and waited. His father's voice came from inside. Come in. Tyrion let out a breath, then glanced at his guards. Wait out here. If he murders me, please avenge my death. The Unsullied nodded and stood at attention. Then Tyrion closed his eyes, sent up a silent prayer for strength to whatever god would hear him, and entered the room. His father was sitting at his desk, turning something in his hand. It took Tyrion a moment to recognize it as a Syvas piece, a king with a cracked crown. It had once been one of Arya's favorite pieces, and now his father was rolling it between his fingers. She really did convince him to play the game, Tyrion thought. Strange. Tywin noticed Tyrion and set the piece back on the desk with a sharp clack. Did your queen send you? She did, Tyrion said, with a message. Deliver it then, Tywin said in a disinterested voice as he shuffled through some of the papers on his desk. Tyrion knew his father was only feigning apathy in order to rile him, yet still his tone strung. It always strung. Queen Daenerys wishes to offer her full support and the support of her allies in the war against the dead, Tyrion said. In exchange, when the war is over, you will deliver the peace you promised, or... He paused, thinking of how to better phrase the threat. Or there will be consequences. The shadow of a cold smile passed over Tywin's face, though he did not look up from his work. I doubt those were the words she used. Fire may have been mentioned, Tyrion admitted. She does readily embrace that part of her house, Tywin said, and if I disagree to this proposal, will she withdraw her help? No, she will help regardless, Tyrion said. I believe she's just making sure you understand that if you go to war with her afterwards, she will respond in kind. Yes, that does seem a bit obvious, Tywin said flatly. Right, well, I'm just the messenger. Tyrion took a step back toward the door. If there's nothing else, I think I'll just... No, Tywin rose from his desk, crossing over the side table at the wall and pouring himself a goblet of wine. Don't go just yet. Tyrion lifted his chin, feeling suddenly nervous. You can't give me orders anymore, father. I believe you gave that privilege up when you exiled me. Tywin turned to face him. Then, to his surprise, he extended the cup of wine toward Tyrion. It was a request, not an order. Ah, Tyrion swallowed hard, looking nervously at the goblet of wine. What was his father's play here exactly? Everything sounds like an order coming from you. He glanced up at him. Is it poisoned? You're the second person to suspect me of poisoning their drink today, Tywin said. I've never poisoned anyone in my life. I don't think you would consider yourself above poison. You're a practical man and poison is an effective solution, Tyrion said. Nonetheless, it's not poisoned, Tywin said. If I wanted you dead, I could have left you to Cersei years ago. Fair enough. Tyrion slowly accepted the glass and took a long swig. He desperately needed wine to survive this conversation, poisoned or not. You must regret that now, letting me go. I imagine your queen would have found her way to Westeros with or without your help, Tywin said, pouring a goblet for himself before crossing back to his desk. She doesn't need you to wage war, not when she has 3 dragons. He sat down again. Or 2 dragons, I should say. Tyrion sighed, drawing up a chair in front of his father's desk and taking a seat. I knew it would have been better for her to just bring the one. No, it's a good thing she didn't, Tywin said. Now we're all on the same page regarding the army of the dead and have no need to kill each other before they arrive. No, we'll wait until after they're dead to kill each other. Wonderful. Did I or did I not promise a peaceful resolution to the conflict? You promised it, I just don't think it's possible, Tyrion said. And why is that? Tywin asked. Because the Dornish will not accept peace without your death, Tyrion thought, and you will fight to keep living, so neither of you will give and the country will fall to war again. But he didn't say any of that. He just shrugged and sipped his wine. If he alerted his father to his own death now, Daenerys would never get the chance to win any of the other lords to her side. Westeros seems to favour war over peace more often than not. His father scrutinised him for a long while and Tyrion felt a bit like a child again. His father had that power. Even though Tyrion was no longer under his thumb and a man grown by many years, that stare always managed to make him feel nervous. And yet there was something so odd about this meeting. His father had not yet hurled any insults at him, not yet demeaned him for stupidity or traitorous motives. He had even given him a goblet of wine. It was suspiciously cordial behaviour for the man who always so hated him. He wants something from me, Tyrion thought. He played nice with Daenerys too. Because he wants something, I cannot give too easily to him. What is your judgment of Daenerys Targaryen? Tywin asked at last. Tyrion blinked. My judgment. Yes, your judgment, Tywin said. She mentioned that you had judged her to be a good queen. Why? Tyrion wondered for a moment if his father had ever asked his opinion on anything. It felt very strange, and it took him a moment to get his thoughts in order. She seems a much better ruler than all the kings in my living memory. He shifted in his seat. She has a stronger will than Tommen. She's kinder than Joffrey and a much better listener. She actually wants to be queen, unlike Robert, who had no idea what to do with the position. And Ares. Well, if she were like him, King's Landing would already be burning, and I would likely be a pile of ashes back in Meereen. He tapped his fingers against the edge of his wine glass. Beyond all of that, she has a good heart, which I know isn't particularly important to you, but it's important to many other people. I believe she would be good for Westeros." Tywin raised his eyebrows. Would burning several houses to the ground if she doesn't get her way also be good for Westeros? Tyrion sighed. She's a proud woman, of course she is. Her name and claim is all she really has, and when it is threatened she lashes out. It's not as if you can speak against that. Just look what happened with the Rains when they questioned Lannister authority. He sat forward in his seat. She's come up from nothing. She was completely alone in the world, and she clawed her way up the mountain, gained dragons, gained armies, gained loyalty. It wasn't her name that did that, it was her. And now that she's so close to her ultimate goal, she can't set it aside. No part of her will allow it. She doesn't want to destroy any houses, but she will if there is no other way. She would be a weak ruler if she let every lord and lady walk over her. We both know that. Perhaps, Tywin said, and what happens if she wins the throne? What will she do then? Rule in peace, I hope. Work with the other lords and ladies to help Westeros through the winter. Help to unify the country again. Tyrion shrugged. There has been so much to discuss with gaining the throne, there hasn't been a lot of time to speak about what comes after. Tywin studied him, and Tyrion felt the desire to look away or harden his expression so that his father could not read his face. But that was a foolish notion. He wasn't lying or trying to hide anything. And if she goes mad? "I don't think that will happen," Tyrion said. "I didn't ask what you thought, I asked what if," Tywin said. "Because you're wrong when you said she's nothing like the Mad King. There's quite a bit about her that is just like her father. Her pride, her impulsiveness, her temper, her ambition. She has a good heart now, but what happens to that heart as the years pass and she grows older and more paranoid and more captivated by the power of fire? It may not happen, but you can't tell me it's impossible." Tyrion's jaw clenched. "If it comes to that, I will handle the situation before it goes too far. At least history is there as a warning." "History will only be of any use to you if you heed it," Tywin said. "I will," Tyrion said. "I'm not as much a fool as you might think." His father said nothing to agree or disagree, which was somehow worse than an insult. Tyrion really had no idea how to read him right now. This was the longest they had ever conversed without devolving into a petty fight. It felt strangely like Tyrion was talking to his father as an equal, which meant it had to be some kind of trap. What in the seven hells is his game here? "So, perhaps you'd like to tell me why you're so certain that it will be war between us once the threat to the north is dealt with," Tywin said after a pause. Tyrion blinked. "What?" "You seem sure your queen is committed to peace, and you know that I'm not one to seek out a war I know I won't win," Tywin said. "So why are you certain we will go to war?" Damn, this was what he wanted, Tyrion thought. Daenerys does want peace, but, well, we don't know what will happen during the battle with the dead. She could lose enough soldiers to become an easier target, and you could go back on your word. And you and Daenerys are hardly the only factions with a stake in all of this. There are the Tyrells, the Starks. "The Dornish," Tywin finished for him. Tyrion exhaled, lifting his goblet to his lips and draining the rest of the wine. Fuck, why does he ask questions he can answer for himself? "I'm not a fool, Tyrion," Tywin said. "I know that the Dornish joined with Daenerys Targaryen because she offered them vengeance against House Lannister. They want me dead. They've always made that abundantly clear." Tywin tilted his head to the side. "And Jaime, does your queen intend to execute him as well?" No, she won't execute him. His life is much easier to argue for than yours," Tyrion said. "Daenerys knows her father was a tyrant, and she knows why Jaime turned against him. She will show mercy." "What of the West or Casterly Rock?" Tywin said. "I can't imagine she'll let him keep control of either." Tyrion exhaled and stood from his seat, packing back to the pitcher of wine. He desperately needed more of it. "If you're hopping to accuse me of trying to steal the rock from Jaime, you're wrong." "I didn't accuse you of anything. I asked you a question which you have refused to answer," Tywin said flatly. "Yes," Tyrion said. "Yes, she plans to take the rock from Jaime and give to someone else. Better to not have the Lannisters ruling the West anymore, I suppose. She'll pardon him at least, but I know that's not enough for you." He took a long gulp of his wine before he turned back to face his father. "So see, that's why we're doomed to fall back into war. Because the Dornish want you dead and you want the Lannister legacy to continue. There's no getting around it." "Your peace-loving queen must find this frustrating," Tywin said. His tone hadn't changed at all, as if not one bit of this surprised him. That only worried Tyrion more. It meant that his father had some sort of plan to handle the situation. Of course she finds it frustrating, Tyrion said. If she could handle this without fighting the Lannisters she would, because she wouldn't just be fighting the Lannisters, would she? The Starks, the Tyrells, the Tullys, the Baratheons. Somehow you've gotten them all on your side through threats and marriages. Or both. This is a bloody nightmare of a scenario. You're right, it seems we're poised on the brink of a war that will be nearly impossible to avoid, Tywin said calmly. Calmly. Tyrion could not stand how calm he was right now. So I want you to take a counter-offer to your queen. And what's that? Tyrion asked, raising his goblet to his lips again. She will make sure that Jaime inherits Casterly Rock and the title of Warden of the West, Tywin said. And in return, I will willingly stand trial and face whatever judgment is served to me there. Tyrion almost choked on his wine. He wasn't sure he had heard his father right. Perhaps he was drunker than he thought, but Tywin's face was dead serious when he looked up at him. Is this a joke? Have you ever known me as one to joke? Tywin asked. It's an arrangement that casts your queen in a favourable light. She can serve justice and mercy at the same time and paint herself as a hero. That's not. I know it's favourable for her, but I'm confused why you would. Tyrion couldn't help but stumble over his words. This was too outrageous to even think of. This is some sort of trick to lull Daenerys into a false sense of security so you can kill her when she least expects it. You take me for a fool? Tywin asked. If she dies, her dragons are turned loose on the country. Her blood riders are honour-bound to kill the culprit no matter what Westerosi law might state and will set the countryside aflame. Her Unsullied will remain loyal and seek vengeance. The Dornish will blame me whether I am guilty or not. The Greyjoys will raid as many coastal villages as they can manage. Killing her solves none of my problems. It will still leave me with a war, just a more chaotic one. But Tyrion's jaw clenched. What was he supposed to say? He had absolutely no idea. So often he relied on his words and quick wits, but they utterly failed him here. In any war situation, the Lannister name dies, Tywin said. No matter how I approach the conflict, that much is clear. I've told you many times before that it's the name and the legacy that matters, not the individual. So I'll stay alive long enough to see to a peaceful transition, and then I'll leave the rest to Jaime and Arya. It's not ideal, but it's the only possibility. I don't suppose you've discussed this scheme with either of them, have you? Tyrion asked softly. His father's ensuing silence was telling. Of course he hadn't. Jaime would fight against such a plan. And Arya, gods, he had heard the worry in her voice when she had asked about his father's life. She had tried to hide it, but it was there. I'll give the Queen your offer, Tyrion said at last, but if this is some sort of trick. It's not a trick, and you know it. Tywin jerked his head toward the door. Go, it's late and I'm tired. He did sound tired. It was only just now that Tyrion realized how utterly exhausted his father looked. He had been fielding a great deal of conflicts for some time, and now he was facing his greatest challenge yet. It was likely he would not even survive long enough to face execution. It was likely that none of them would survive long enough to see it. At last Tyrion nodded, setting down his empty goblet and stepping back toward the door. I'll have an answer for you in the morning. Tywin nodded once, already back to studying the papers on his desk. With a sigh, Tyrion slipped from the room and closed the door behind him. He stayed there, leaning against the door for a long while, trying to wrap his mind around what had just happened. He had not expected his meeting with his father to go at all in that direction. How was he supposed to feel about the certainty of his father's death when his father was such an awful, cruel man? Lord Tyrion, one of the Unsullied, asked, Are you well? Tyrion nodded once. Yes, we should return to the Queen. Arya had not expected to run into Tyrion on the way to see Lord Tywin about Bran. She had assumed Tyrion would avoid his father like the plague. Indeed, he looked a bit shaken by the meeting and startled to see her. Ah, Lady Arya, what brings you here? I had something to bring to Lord Tywin's attention, Arya said. You. Delivering a message from my queen, Tyrion said. And, Arya asked, will she agree to an alliance? Yes, fully, Tyrion said. It seems we won't be fighting opposite each other in a war after all. Arya let out a breath, a grin of relief cracking over her face. I have no idea how your father did that, but I'm glad he found some way. I really didn't want to face dragons in battle. The dragons would not want to face you, Tyrion said, but his smile was strained and his voice thin. What's wrong? Arya asked. Oh, nothing really. Tyrion shifted from foot to foot. It's been years since I last spoke to my father and I'm afraid I'm a bit out of practice. I hope he wasn't especially cruel, Arya said. No, don't worry yourself over me, Tyrion gave her a little bow. I'll let you get on with your business then. Then he quickly slipped around her and continued down the hall with his guards. Arya stared after him for a moment, trying to decipher the hitch of his shoulders and the speed of his walk. Perhaps it was just a nervous energy that came from being in the same room as Lord Tywin, but he seemed to be hiding something. She shook away the thought and continued on toward the Tower of the Hand. Lord Tywin was leaning over the map of Westeros again, studying the northern portion of the country. He glanced up briefly when she entered before looking back down at the table. Winterfell would have been one of the more defensible positions, he said, but if the wall falls any time soon, we will not have time to properly reinforce it or relocate our armies there. Bran said the same thing, Arya said. He said a lot of things actually. I think you should speak with him about the strategy of this war. Why is that? Tywin asked. Is your brother a particularly strong tactician? Well, he was always the best in his studies, Arya said, but it's less to do with that and more with the fact that he's a green seer. Do you know that term? I've heard it, I don't know what it is, Tywin said. It means he can see things, Arya said. He's seen things from 100 years ago and further back. He can go other places without leaving his room. She sighed. And because he's apparently the three-eyed raven, he can see bits and pieces of the future. Tywin sighed. Gods, you Stark children are a strange lot. Your tie with those dire wolves is odd enough. Now this. It's true, Arya said. Bran knows things that he couldn't possibly know unless it was true. I'm not calling into question the truth of it. I've seen a dead man walk and a dragon fly. Nothing surprises me anymore, Tywin said. So if he can see bits of the future, what does that mean? Has he seen us fail? No, that is, the future isn't certain yet. It can be difficult to interpret, Arya said. The problem is that the Night King is a green seer as well and can also see bits of the future. Tywin rubbed a hand over his forehead, looking so exasperated that Arya thought he might overturn the table with a flick of his wrist. That does explain how he saw the dragon coming. He looked at Arya. So what you're telling me is that we are fighting an enemy that can see our moves before we make them. Well, not exactly, but yes, the Night King will be aware of at least some of our moves, Arya said. Bran has been working day and night to figure out how to counter him, and he has a plan. Multiple plans, actually, depending on the futures. He didn't explain it all to me, so I'm not sure what they were. It's all still a bit confusing. Confusing, that seems to be an understatement. He let out a heavy breath. I'll speak to your brother tomorrow before we convene at the Dragon Pit again. There will be a war council, of course, once we're all on the same page. I expect you to be there. Arya could help but smile at that particular command. She had only stood in on one war council, and it was at Cornfield to strategize how to deal with Greyjoy raiders. During the Northern Civil War, she had passed her plan along to Robb and Tywin beforehand, but now she could stand at the table with the others, and it made her chest swell with pride. I will be, of course. Tywin nodded once, pushing away from the map. Good. Arya circled the table, walking her fingers along the edge. I ran into Tyrion on my way here. Apparently we can expect Daenerys' full support in the battle against the dead. Yes, we can, Tywin said, leaning back against his desk. I have no idea how you managed that, Arya said. It seemed impossible after the meeting. I promised her what she wanted, Tywin said. A peaceful transition. None of the lords or ladies will be happy about it, but they would rather bend to a new queen and lose their families to dragon fire. So if we survive the dead, she will be queen, Arya said. She will, Tywin said. Arya bit the inside of her cheek. Margaery won't be happy about that. Queen Margaery already knew that it was a possibility, Tywin said. She put up a strong front at the pit, of course. They all did, which was what I wanted from them. A strong front was the only way to force Daenerys Targaryen to negotiate. Still, Margaery and her child will at least inherit Storm's End. There are worse fates, but you know as well as I do that war will not end well for any of us. No, I'm glad, Arya said. I don't know what kind of ruler she'll be. But I can't take another war after this one. If we survive this one, she sighed, she can't be worse than Joffrey. Hopefully not, Tywin said, and if she is, perhaps you'll handle her the same way. Arya's mouth twitched into a small smile. I'll have to find another method. I don't have a faceless man in my debt anymore. I'm sure you'll manage, Tywin said. There was something strange about his expression and tone that Arya could not name. He seemed to regret making peace as much as he was glad for it. She supposed Tywin Lannister was not one to easily admit defeat, nor did he often surrender power. He would only do it if there was no other way. But at least it was almost over. They only had to survive one more war, one more great battle before a long-awaited peace. Then maybe they would both have time to rest. Chapter 90, The Great War Council. When Tyrion returned to Daenerys' cabin on her flagship, she was still awake, looking over a map of Westeros. She had spent quite a lot of time doing that at Dragonstone, trying to memorize the terrain of the home she did not remember. The map before her was not quite as large or impressive as the table at Dragonstone, but still functional enough. "You're back," she glanced up at Tyrion. "It seems you survived the encounter." "Yes, Your Grace," Tyrion said. "I'm glad." Daenerys looked back to the map. "Tell me, how long does it take to travel from here to the north?" "It depends. If we are carting any sort of supplies, a month," Tyrion said. "It could be longer, of course, if the snows grow worse. With a smaller force or cavalry, the journey is shorter." "I can't imagine we'll be able to use the north for our main attack then," Daenerys said. "If the Night King can use—" She trailed off for a moment, as if she could not quite force herself to say her lost dragon's name. "If a dragon can bring down the wall, the dead won't wait for long." "Likely not," Tyrion said. "Which is the most defensible position then?" Daenerys said. "The neck. It's quite narrow. It could keep the dead from spreading us too thin." "The neck is a possibility, Your Grace," Tyrion said. "I might suggest the Eyrie as well, but the Dothraki would be useless there, and it does not seem that the Arryns wish to join with any of us in this war." "I suppose we'll decide on a course of action tomorrow." Daenerys rolled up the map. "And what of your father? How did he receive my message?" "He received it. He continues to insist he wants a peaceful resolution, and I believe him," Tyrion said. "Whether he wants peace or not, there's no way I can allow him to live when it's all said and done. It would be easy if I could, but after what he's done—" Daenerys trailed off. "Do you think he will keep to his peace once he knows he will be brought to trial?" "Well, regarding that matter," Tyrion said, he already deduced the situation on his own. He knows perfectly well that your alliance with the Dornish is built on hatred of him and that they have demanded his demise." Daenerys' brow furrowed. "And he still wants peace." "He made a counter-offer," Tyrion said. "He will agree to stand trial and receive whatever judgment you give him. In return, you will pardon Jaime of all crimes and let him and Lady Arya keep the Rock and the title of Warden of the West." Daenerys looked positively shocked by the offer. She slowly sank into her seat, contemplating Tyrion's words. He understood why she was confused and suspicious. It was a very advantageous proposal and a bit out of character for someone like his father. "And you're sure he understands what standing trial means for him?" "He understands," Tyrion said. Daenerys picked at one of her nails. "This offer could be a trick, I suppose. It seems too good to be true." "I thought the same thing at first," Tyrion said. "I thought it must be part of a clever plot. My father is not the type to volunteer his own life, but he wasn't lying, I know that for sure." He paced around the table. "He's making this play because he wants Jaime and Arya to inherit the Rock. He wants them to maintain their status after he's gone, to carry on his legacy." Daenerys considered the notion for a long moment. "And, you know your father better than I do. What should I do with this counter-offer?" "Accept it, please," Tyrion said. "If you don't, it will be war between us all, and a bloody one. Accept the deal, but don't tell the Dornish. They won't like my father dying on his own terms." "You want me to lie to my allies?" Daenerys asked. "Not lie," Tyrion said. "You can tell them the truth, that Tywin Lannister will pay for his crimes. That's all they want in the end." Tyrion took a step toward her. "You sent me to speak to my father because you trusted my judgment of him. This is my judgment." Daenerys studied him for a moment longer before nodding. "Then I trust your judgment. I'll accept his offer. Provided that we survive the army of the dead, he will stand trial for his crimes, but not until I name his son Warden of the West." She exhaled. "Some may see it as weak to let your brother keep his titles, but I'll take that risk if it means keeping the peace." Tyrion let out a breath. He was relieved and yet not all at once. It was a strange thing, after all, arranging the death of one's own father, but at least it ensured Jaime's position. Jaime and Arya would be secure under Daenerys' rule, even though Tywin would be gone. They must not find out about this either, Tyrion thought. Not yet. especially not Arya. After all, Arya had once killed a king to save someone she cared about, even though she knew she might suffer consequences for it. She may be willing to kill dragons as well. A decade ago, Tywin could not have imagined becoming so acquainted with the Stark family. He never liked Ned Stark, not from the moment they first met, and he had no interest in any of his offspring. He had assumed, of course, that his children would all be just as troublesome and obsessed with honor as him. A thorn in Tywin's side, perhaps, but not potential allies. However, the Stark children had been some of the most surprising people he had ever met in his life. Robb Stark had crushed him in battle after battle despite never having gone to war in his life, and now was one of the strongest and most effective leaders in Westeros. Sansa Stark, who once seemed a fragile waif, had proven exceptionally clever during the Winterfell civil war, and her quick thinking had saved many of her people. And Arya? Well, Arya was a different story entirely. But the one Stark child he had not quite figured out was Bran Stark. He left very little impression on him in Winterfell. Tywin recalled the boy asking for permission to venture to the wall for reasons he refused to explain, but he did not remember much else. Now, it seemed the youngest Stark child had become a very important player in this game, and perhaps the most surprising of all his siblings, given his new abilities. He did not look his age. Though he was barely a man grown, his expression was ancient and he sat as still as a statue in his chair, his hands folded in his lap. He barely even blinked. Tywin had never known almost anyone to be so still, much less a boy of 17. "Lord Tywin," Bran said when he stopped beside his chair, "this is a surprise." "If I understand your new condition correctly, I don't believe it is," Tywin said. A shadow of a smile passed over the boy's face, but it did not reach his eyes. "I can't see everything, you know. It's not that simple or clear." "So I've heard," Tywin said. "It may not be clear, but according to your sister, this sight of yours could be useful to us." "It could," Bran said. "At least I know some of the ways the Night King could move, and I know what he wants. That's the most important thing, isn't it? Knowing what an enemy wants, so you can keep it from them." Bran glanced up at Tywin. "Or give it to them." Tywin's eyes narrowed slightly. "How many recent negotiations have you been listening in on?" "All of them," Bran said. "I have no choice, they all affect the future as well." 7 hells, the boy was like Varys, but 100 times worse. He could listen into meetings and conversations without even being in a room. A valuable ally, but a very dangerous enemy. "You made the right decision," Bran continued on. "Not only your offer but keeping it from my sister. She cannot know yet, not until the Night King is defeated." "If he is defeated," Tywin said, "no one else can know either, so I don't recommend trading that information." A shadow of the smile passed over the boy's face. "I don't trade information for profit. I use it where it's needed, to ensure that time goes on passing." Tywin studied Bran Stark carefully. Everything about his face, his eyes, his expression, it was unsettling. Tywin could not remember the last time he felt unsettled in any conversation, but somehow he knew without testing him that this boy could lay his entire life in front of him if he wished. "You said you know what the Night King wants," Tywin said at last. "What is that?" "Me," Bran said, rolling down his sleeve to reveal a bluish mark on his arm in the shape of a hand print. "And that is a piece of information we must use very wisely." The Long Night War Council was perhaps the first of any gathering to have so many great families standing on the same side of a conflict. Every region was represented in some way from the north to Dawn. Only the Arryns were absent. They had been sent a raven, of course, urging them to prepare for war, but they had received no reply. But besides Lysa and her sickly son, all sides were represented around the table. Arya had never pictured such an alliance. Never in her wildest dreams. Robb represented the north and Jon and Bran stood on either side of him, since they both knew more about the threat than most. Arya's great-uncle Bryden and Uncle Edmure represented the Riverlands. Yara Greyjoy represented the Iron Islands. Olenna Tyrell, as well as her son Mace and her grandson Willers, represented the Reach, and Sansa stood beside her husband. Margaery represented the Baratheons and the Crown. Oberyn represented Dawn. And of course, Jaime and Arya represented the West. Daenerys stood as the last Targaryens along with her chief advisors, including Tyrion, Jorah Mormont, Barristan Selmy and Missandei. The General of the Unsullied, Grey Worm, and the General of the Dothraki, whose name Arya had not yet learned, also had a place at the table. It was clear to everyone in the room, of course, that Tywin was the one in control of this war council. Regardless of the strength of Daenerys' armies, she was unfamiliar with the terrain of Westeros as well as the capabilities of most of the armies, and she seemed wise enough to defer for now. After all, she was not yet the Queen of Westeros. She had agreed to wait until after the army of the dead was defeated to receive the crown. At present our numbers are approximately even with that of the dead, Tywin said. Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow went north a fortnight ago and glimpsed the army from the air. They have over 200,000 foot soldiers, along with other creatures of the north. Apparently there are giants among them, though fortunately not many. Those around the table shifted nervously at the thought. For a long time, giants and White Walkers had been no more than stories to frighten children with just before bed. They were not supposed to be real. However, their numbers will only grow with time. The Night King can add any fallen soldier or civilian to their army. It won't matter if that civilian has never held a sword day in their life. They will fight as hard as any of the other soldiers. If they gain enough new recruits, numbers alone will overwhelm us. We've already begun an evacuation of the north, Robb said. Starting with those closest to the wall, all lords have been instructed to leave only a small garrison behind to defend their keeps and continue south. Naturally, we won't be able to save everyone. We may miss smaller villages and some could refuse to leave, but we can at least minimize the death toll. Won't the small garrisons be useless? Daenerys asked. No matter how small, they'll still add more men to the Night King's army. Not necessarily, Bran said. It is possible that the Night King will avoid small encampments. He does not care about claiming castles. We speak as if the Night King has already crossed the wall, Mace Tyrell spoke up. I thought this was exactly why the wall was built, to keep out the White Walkers. Why are we so sure it will fail now? Tywin did not reply, but rather looked to Daenerys, passing the burden of the explanation to her. Daenerys kept her expression calm, though she raised her chin slightly. While we were surveying the enemy, my dragons and I were caught in a sudden cloud bank, and when we found our way out of it, the Night King was waiting. He took down one of my dragons with a single throw of a javelin, so now the army of the dead has a dragon at their disposal. Muttering swept across the war council as the lords and ladies took in this news. For some, the news of the dragon brought panic. For others, anger. Daenerys bore it in silence. 7 fucking hells, the Blackfish muttered. They were hard enough to fight without a bloody dragon, and you handed them one just like that. There is no way the Queen could have known such a thing would happen, and a survey of the enemy was necessary, Tyrion spoke up. Would you have preferred to face the army blind? If I knew they didn't have a dragon, the Blackfish asked, maybe. What's done is done, Tywin said in a commanding voice that once again silenced the room. But with the dragon, the fall of the wall is assured, which means we stop the Night King before he claims the entirety of Westeros. We are taking the defensive approach. There will be no meeting him head-on in battle, and how we defend will depend entirely on how the Night King moves. The Night King has 2 goals, Bran said. His voice was surprisingly commanding and drew the attention of everyone around the table. 1, to take every living soul in Westeros as his own. 2, to destroy me. Why does he want you? Daenerys asked. The 3-eyed raven is the memory of this world, Bran said. Everything that has happened I hold in me. If he kills me, he erases it, and all that will be left to remember is the cold, an endless night, an endless winter. His fingers rubbed along the arm of his chair. Besides that, I am the greatest threat to him, the only other green seer who can match his strength. His conquest of Westeros becomes much easier once I am gone. Arya felt a chill go through her at the thought of the Night King getting anywhere close to her little brother, and her jaw clenched. Then we'll hide you somewhere safe, somewhere that the Night King is unlikely to find you. It won't matter, he will always find me. Bran rolled down his sleeve to reveal his arm. There was a bluish bruise there in the shape of a hand, as if someone had grabbed him too tightly. His mark is on me. He knows where I am no matter where I go. He won't get anywhere near you, Arya promised. Regardless, since we know what the Night King wants, we can use it to our advantage, Tywin said. There are many directions in which this conflict could proceed, and we must be prepared to fight multiple different wars if they come. Any gaps in our defences will prove disastrous, and every lost battle will drastically decrease our chances of success. This is different from any wars we've fought in the past. In those, at least, the dead stayed dead. He scanned the room. Reckless heroism and impulsive attacks will kill us, so do not entertain any such plans. No one spoke for a long moment, but they all seemed to absorb the severity of the situation. Every single one of them knew that if they fell in the battle to come, they could rise again and killed their allies, their friends, even their family. In most wars, one could lay down their life and hope that the living could make good use of their sacrifice. Now, even dying in battle seemed like a betrayal. When no one protested, Tywin looked to Bran and gave him a nod. Bran rolled a bit closer to the table. There are 3 possible strategies the Night King might take. The first and the most unlikely is the slow approach. When the wall falls, he could cover every inch of Westeros in his men, taking the living one at a time and adding them to his forces. We will know quickly if this is his plan, because he will spread out and he will stop to kill even the smallest northern garrisons. Why is this the most unlikely approach? Willers Tyrell asked. If the Night King is confident in victory, he would have no need to rush, and it would ensure he had the largest possible force before he ever met with our armies. By the time he crosses the wall, most of the north will be cleared away. His gains will be minimal, Bran said. And the longer he takes on the march, the more time we have to prepare. We could carve off pieces of his army little by little and retreat a bit further each time. And the Night King is not confident in his victory. Not quite. He won't be until I am dead. However, if this is his approach, we will make our first stand before he reaches the neck. Moat Cailin seems the obvious choice, Robb said. If we attack them while their army is spread out, we'll fall, but to cross the neck they will clump together again. We could launch an assault from there. Would we have enough time to fortify it? Jon asked. The dead don't need sleep or rest, so they travel faster than a standard army. In this strategy, they would be taking their time to cover all of the north, and the north is vast, Robb said. We would have time. Regardless, we'll know soon if we should fortify Moat Cailin or leave it with a small garrison like the others. Yes, if the dead pass the first few northern keeps without bothering to launch an assault, that means they are focused on confronting our unified forces first, Bran said. They'll move more quickly, and the goal will be to wipe out any large armies to make the remaining conquest of Westeros easier. It will still be best to make a stand in the neck if that is the case, Tyrion said. The trident will halt them or at least force them to go around. So if we want to stop them at the rivers, we garrison the twins, Bryden said. Nice of the phrase to mostly die off and leave it to us. And if one tower is overwhelmed, we can pull back to the second. Retreat by sea if we must, Yara said. That way if we do fail, we can at least salvage some of our forces for a counter-attack. We could also keep a steady wave of reinforcements coming, Olenna said. They don't need sleep, but we do. We would need to replace soldiers on the walls often. Can't have anyone falling asleep during this siege. And what's the third possibility? Arya asked. If they don't stop for small garrisons and they don't stop for a very large one, what then? Then it means the Night King is marching south for me specifically, Bran said. That I am his primary goal and that the rest of his attack can wait until after I am gone. If so, wherever I am, he will find me. Wherever I am, that's where he'll take his armies, and he will kill anyone who stands in his way. And if that is the case, we would need to place Brandon Stark well, Tywin said. Preferably in a defensible keep large enough to garrison our forces and strong enough to repel the vast majority of the Night King's foot soldiers, and it would need to be far enough south that we have time to prepare. South of the neck, I assume, Margaery said. And what castle would serve that purpose? With all of us standing together, we have a great deal of men, and King's Landing is out of the question. It's too far south. We would never be able to evacuate King's Landing in time, Sansa agreed. Luring an undead dragon to the most populated city in Westeros would not be a wise course. No, King's Landing is out of the question, Olenna said, but I don't suppose there are many here who would volunteer their own keeps for the job. After all, even if we survive the attack, the damage would be great. Certainly we must keep the dead out of the reach unless we want the country to starve. Harrenhal, Bran murmured, and everyone stared at him in surprise. Harrenhal is the best place. There was a doubtful silence that filled the room, and Arya's brow furrowed as she considered the cursed Black Castle. Harrenhal had passed often between houses in the past few centuries, and it had fallen into disrepair since the day Aegon the Conqueror set upon it. She remembered it well enough. It was there that she had lost her freedom some 6 years ago when Tywin Lannister first discovered her name. Why Harrenhal? Jaime asked at last. It was the first time he had spoken up in the War Council. In fact, it was the first time he had spoken up in any meeting in the past few days. It's large enough, of course, but crumbling in many places. Crumbling, but usable, Arya murmured. It's been some time since I've been to Harrenhal. Many years, but unless things have changed, I think Bran might be right. The walls are weaker at the top, but they're still much higher than the walls of most keeps. And even though the towers were broken down by Aegon's attacks, they're the tallest towers I've ever seen. It's easy to think of it as vulnerable because it's changed so many hands in the past few centuries, but that was because no one wanted it. Too expensive to maintain, too large to garrison with one single army. And cursed, her uncle Edmure spoke up, if there's any keep in this country that is haunted, it would be that one. Tell me we're not speaking of ghost stories, Bryden muttered. We are preparing to fight dead men, Edmure retorted. Why are we so suddenly doubtful of ghosts? I assure you Harrenhal is not cursed, Tywin said. Just unlucky. Fortunately, we're not trying to hold the castle for many years, we're only using it as a battleground. He glanced down at her. It's as Lady Arya said, the walls are falling apart but every one of them is standing. It will be the only keep that can support most of our men behind the walls. The weak points can be fortified before the Night King arrives. Dangerously far south as it is, it's near enough for us to keep well supplied with resources, Olenna said. We'll be able to transport food from the Reach there quickly. And Dragonstone will be able to supply more dragon glass every day until the Night King arrives, Daenerys said. How large are the smiths of Harrenhal? Larger than most, Tywin said, but we'll have the smiths of the nearby keeps working day and night to forge enough weapons. We're forgetting something, aren't we? Willers asked. Harrenhal may be built to withstand land attacks, but the Night King has a dragon now. Every keep in the world is vulnerable to dragons, Daenerys said. And even if the Night King has one dragon, we still have two. If I keep Drogon and Rhaegal in a tight circle around the keep, they should be able to intercept the White Dragon. We need not rely only on the dragons, Oberyn said. The towers of Harrenhal brush the sky and they are ideal for siege weapons. If we can set scorpions at the top and arm them with dragon glass bolts, perhaps we can lure the White Dragon to its death. We'll want siege weapons on all of the walls, Bryden said. Scorpions, yes, but also catapults and trebuchets. These whites are vulnerable to fire, yes, we'll rain fire on them. That should make a dent in their numbers. We can use fire elsewhere as well, Grey Worm spoke up. Despite a heavy accent, he had a clear command of the common tongue. Can we dig trenches around this castle? It would take a great deal of manpower, but yes, Tywin said. We have manpower, Grey Worm said. Trenches can be made to be set on fire and hold back the dead men for as long as possible. At least one trench would be a great help, Barristan Selmy speculated. Two if we can manage it, whatever helps keep them back. I'm sure the trenches will only buy us time, but that's what we need, Jon said. We should fortify the tops of the walls with dragon glass spikes. It will help keep the dead from climbing them. Are these dead men such gifted climbers? Oberyn asked. No man could scale such a wall. Not alone, maybe, but if they must pile on top of each other, they can and will. They have no regards for their own lives, Jon said. We can't think of them like normal soldiers. They will do whatever they are commanded to do without thought, and they cannot feel pain. A pile tall enough to surpass the walls of Harrenhal, I think it would be an easy task for them. We'll fortify the walls all the way around then, and keep them well manned, Tywin said. And what about Bran? Arya asked. If the Night King is looking for him, he'll need to be at the safest place in Harrenhal. Where is that? Is there any place underground? There is, Bran said, but I won't go underground. I'll wait in the Godswood. You'll be exposed there, Jon said. If the dragon flew overhead. It may fly overhead, but I must be in the Godswood, Bran said. Harrenhal has quite a large one located behind the walls. It's defensible enough, but even if it wasn't, I must wait there, believe me. Why? Yara Greyjoy spoke up. Why exactly should we believe you? Most of us don't know who you are, yet you claim to see the future and the past. It's a large claim to make. Bran looked up at her, raising his eyebrows. I can offer proof if you would like, he asked calmly. Which awful moment of your life would you like to return to? Yara's lip curled and Arya gripped the table, feeling a sudden urge to stand between the Greyjoy woman and Bran. But much to Arya's surprise, it was Jaime who spoke up. We don't have time to press the boy for proof, and you wouldn't want him to give it here anyway, unless you'd like him to spill your darkest secrets in front of the entire War Council. He's the only one who truly knows the Night King. Trusting him is our best bet. Arya looked from Jaime to Bran, her brow furrowed. She knew that Bran had remembered his fall, of course, but did Jaime know he had remembered? Had they talked? He seemed certain of Bran's abilities, so if that was the case. There's another issue, Robb said, interrupting Arya's thought process. Harrenhal is large enough and it may be the best location to mount a defense, but it is dangerously far south. It's not just the north we would have to evacuate, but the neck and the riverlands as well. Perhaps parts of the west and the Vale if we can convince them to move from their places. How could we even begin to manage so many refugees? If the Night King makes for Harrenhal with all haste, it seems to me he will avoid fanning out into the Vale or the west, Tywin said. He would cover the map if he was mounting a slow approach, but if that is his play we would stop him long before he leaves the neck. So suppose we only evacuate the north, the neck and the riverlands, Robb said. That's still no small number of people. No, Jon agreed, but we needn't move them all south. The dead can't swim. We could evacuate many to the nearest islands. It would give the fleets of Westeros something to do, since they will have little use against the dead. Lady Greyjoy, you can see to that, yes, Daenerys asked. By the looks of this map the Iron Islands are quite large. They could people safe for a time. Yes, your grace, they could, Yara said, assuming the dragon does not fly to every island and burn the people out. People on the islands would be useless to him, Bran said. Even if he killed them, they couldn't cross the sea back to the mainland. It still doesn't seem wise to let the dead march south unimpeded, Margaery said. The army will still grow in size no matter how many civilians we manage to save. The Dothraki commander spoke up in his native tongue, glancing at Daenerys as he did. Missandei translated for him. He asks if Westeros has many horses. Most of the major houses have some cavalry, yes, Tywin said. Not nearly as many as the Dothraki. And the dead, Missandei asked, do they have horses? Some, Jon said, but not many. They don't have anything close to a true cavalry. The Dothraki commander leaned over the map, pointing out various locations on the map, as he continued to speak while Missandei translated. Cavalry can be used to wear down on travelling armies, she said. Small groups can hide in trees or beyond hills and swoop in from either side, then retreat before the enemy has time to react. It lessens their force bit by bit over time. Horses can outrun the dead, Robb agreed. We can tear at them from the side and from their flank all the way down the neck if we must. Whenever one section of cavalry retreats, they can pass along information about the enemy's movements to the next grouping. Until they reach the twins, Daenerys said. It seems to me there is another problem. We would need to split our forces between the twins and Harrenhal. That would leave us more vulnerable. The twins and Harrenhal are close enough to provide reinforcements to each other, Tyrion pointed out. If the dead attack the twins with the object of wiping out a large army, the armies of Harrenhal can ride to defend them, provided that the garrison can hold the twins for a few days. If the dead continue past the twins and toward Harrenhal, then the soldiers in the twins can pursue. Either way, our armies will end up united. And if for some reason the dead decide to attack both, Jorah Mormont asked, what if they mean to divide us? They'll divide themselves as well then, Tyrion said. It will be messy, no doubt, but at least only one half of the army will have the Night King. The Night King is the main threat, yes, but not the only threat, Jon said. There are other White Walkers who command the dead along with him. They can be killed by dragon glass and Valyrian steel just like the Whites, but they are stronger, faster and smarter. Killing them is beneficial to us, Bran said. When a White Walker falls, the Whites it turn do as well. Killing a White Walker destroys a portion of our enemy all at once, but for that reason it is likely they will stay back from the battle until our forces are weakened. Above all, the main goal is the Night King. If he dies, they will all die, but he will not make an easy target. What will kill him? Daenerys asked. I assume dragon fire will cause him some harm. I don't know, I can't see for sure what will kill him, Bran said. Perhaps fire, perhaps dragon glass or Valyrian steel, but he can be killed. Tywin nodded once. Then we will be prepared when reveals himself. It was then that the strategy seemed to fall into place. There were perhaps 1,000 details to work out in the coming days, and everyone knew that success was not guaranteed. But at the very least, they had a plan, and for once, Westeros appeared to be a united front against the coming storm. Because they all knew the truth. If their armies fell, whether at the Twins or Harrenhal, Westeros would be covered in a never-ending night, and there would be no one left to remember all of the wars that came before. Chapter 91, Return to the Riverlands. The War Council set the entirety of Westeros in motion, perhaps as it had never been before. In all of the great conflicts about which Arya had read, There were never so many families and factions acting on the same side. Aegon's conquest, the dance of the dragons, Robert's rebellion. It was all a mad dash of various families to choose sides, and to, hopefully, choose the winning side. Now they had another enemy and it united them. Arya could not help but wonder how the books would write about this war if they survived. She could not help but wonder about the songs that would fill every corner of the country, if only there were singers left to sing them. There were two main priorities. First, evacuating every living soul in the north and the Riverlands, and second, fortifying the castles they would defend. Robb agreed that if Bran was right and the Night King intended to march quickly south, that he would stand at the Twins with the Northmen. The Tullys and the other family of the Riverlands naturally planned to do the same. Besides them, half the Dornish and Unsullied would provide support. Meanwhile, at Harrenhal, the Lannisters, the Tyrells, and the other half of the Unsullied and Dornish would prepare to intercept the army of the dead if they came directly for Bran. The Baratheon banners, or what was left of them, would guard King's Landing, which would be a hub of refugees. Granted, if the dead broke through the Twins and Harrenhal, King's Landing would be doomed, but they could not very well leave the city unmonitored, especially since it would soon be swarming with terrified people from the Riverlands. The only faction without a concrete place to guard was the Dothraki. They were to be a mobile force, meant to carve off sections of the Night King's forces, along with the cavalry from other houses. They would move depending on how the enemy moved. Daenerys Targaryen seemed confident in the ability of her main commander to make that call. The role of the dragons was the most up for debate. Their main directive would, after all, be the Night King, but they could not stray too far from the main army, for fear of falling into a trap without any support from the ground, or leaving the army without defence. The question then was whether or not Daenerys should keep her dragons at the Twins or at Harrenhal, and the debate went on for some time. If she placed her dragons at the Twins, the Night King could sweep south and damage the southern keep, decimating half of their army. If she kept her dragons at Harrenhal, it could leave the Twins just as exposed. Harrenhal was the best location in case the Night King went for a bold attack on King's Landing, of course, but that was assuming the Night King would part from his army at all. Perhaps he would stay close and take a defensive position. In the end, it was Bran that offered a rather cryptic solution. "Start at the Twins," he said, "but follow your green dragon. Whichever direction he goes, you must go with him." He did not explain further, either because he couldn't or he refused. But Arya wondered if Bran could warg into the minds of other creatures just as easily as he had once warged into Summer. A fortnight after the War Council, Bran announced that the wall had fallen when the dragon had broken through at East Watch by the sea. The words fell like a stone in the pit of Arya's stomach. Now they knew for sure that the dead were coming for them, and soon they would know how they meant to end Westeros. It was fortunate then that the evacuation of the north had already been in process. Bran reported that the last of the settlements north of Winterfell had evacuated a few days before, and that their mother and Robb's children had reached the neck. Certain knowledge of their safety was one bright spot in the midst of everything else. While Robb and his men focused on clearing out the north and getting them south or to the nearest islands, Arya decided to focus on the southern part of the Riverlands, which would be evacuating to King's Landing. She took horses and a few Lannister men, including Merwyn and Thomas, off the main roads and into the depths of the forest. After all, she knew there were many smaller settlements in this area, and she did not want to leave them to the Whites. It took some convincing, of course, to get some of the small folk to leave, but small towns were often full of suspicious people. With the right words, anyone could be encouraged to pack up and move. It would be a lie to say that the whole of Westeros was peacefully cooperating. Plenty of soldiers and some minor lords were trying to take advantage of this mass migration of small folk. They broke into their houses after they were gone, or, sometimes, when they were still inside, using the chaos as an excuse to line their pockets. Arya came across more than one looted house in the woods, and it infuriated her, as if the small folk of the Riverlands needed to suffer any more than they had already. "Do you think it's the same group doing it?" she asked Merwyn, "or multiple?" "Hard to say," Merwyn said. "There are men from all sides who prey on the small folk, and all robberies look the same after they're done." Then one morning Arya heard a scream in the woods. She did not even pause before urging her horse forward, nor did she bother to wait for her men. A few moments later she came upon a little cabin, surrounded by 3 soldiers. A woman and child were cowering next to a chicken coop, and a man was on the ground with a bloody nose. The man standing over him, a thin man with golden hair, was counting a few measly coins from a pouch, and the 2 soldiers behind him were snickering. You can't be weighed down on your way south, the man said. We're just taking it off your hands. You'll do no such thing, Arya said, swinging from her horse. Any man can carry a small pouch of coin. Give him back his money. And who are you to give me orders? The thin man asked. Someone who will take your hand if you don't do as I ask, Arya said. The lead soldiers and his companions reached for their swords, just as her own companions broke from the tree line. Merwin aimed a crossbow at the leader. Hands off your swords and step away from the lady, Merwin ordered. Lady, one of the soldiers shifted nervously. What do you mean, lady? This is Arya Lannister, Thomas said. You strike at her and you'll have Tywin Lannister to deal with, if she doesn't get to you first. Their hands were away from their weapons faster than a blink. It still annoyed Arya that she so often had to rest on Tywin's name to get such a reaction, but she let it go, holding out her hand. The money, please, she said coolly. The thin man handed it over without a second thought, and Arya went to the man on the ground kneeling down in front of him. It's all right, I apologize for their actions. She pressed the pouch into his hand. Take it, then gather all of your valuables and your family. You can ride with us to the main roads. From there the journey to King's Landing will be easy enough. The man nodded once. Thank you, lady. She gave him a smile, then stood to face the soldiers, a distinctly less pleasant expression on her face. Which house do you serve? The Cerrets of Silverhill, the lead soldier muttered. The Cerrets, they're bannermen of House Lannister. I suppose it's fortunate I found you then. Arya threaded her fingers together. How many small folk have you robbed so far? Just this one, lady, the man said. Just one today, maybe, but I doubt this is your first. She glanced behind him at one of the other soldiers who was staring at the ground. You, answer me honestly, how many families? 6, lady, the man murmured. I see, Arya said. Merwin, what is the punishment for theft in the West, do you know? Depends on the theft, Merwin said, but for 6 houses, somewhere between a hand and a hanging. A hand or a hanging, Arya considered this. Well, with the dead coming south, I don't want to give them any more soldiers, nor do I want to take away any fighting hands. She looked back to the thieving soldiers. I'll take 2 fingers from each of you then, 1 for each house you robbed. Don't worry, I'll take them from your weaker hands. She glanced at Thomas. Will you see to it, Tom? Of course, lady. Wait, lady, one of the soldiers said. Mercy, please, we won't do it again. I am showing you mercy, Arya said. More mercy than you showed any of these people. You would have let them starve on the road to King's Landing. What use are they, dead or alive? The thin man protested. They don't fight against the dead. They cower and let us do the work. Who cares if they starve? Arya's eyes narrowed and she felt an icy fury roll through her. Like I said, 6 fingers. Then she turned and moved back to the waiting family. The woman and her daughter had come out from behind the chicken coop now, and the girl was staring at her with fascination. Arya gave her a smile before looking to the mother. Do you have a horse and cart, something to carry your things? We have a cart. Our donkey was taken a few days ago, the woman murmured. You can hitch your cart to one of our horses then, Arya said. She glanced down at the girl again. What's your name? Mary, the girl said. Have you ever ridden a horse, Mary? Arya asked. Used to ride my donkey, Mary said, but now he's gone. I'm sorry they took him, Arya said. You can ride with me if you would like. My horse is a great deal taller than your donkey, but I'll make sure you don't fall. The girl beamed and nodded. Go on, Mary, her mother said. Fetch your things from the house. The girl scampered off and the woman turned back to Arya. Bless you, lady. We didn't have much more to steal, but what little we did have. There's no need to thank me, Arya said. They serve one of my house's bannermen. It's only right that I see them punished. A few fingers. Seems a fitting punishment, said an unfamiliar voice. Arya turned to see another group of men approaching, wearing nondescript clothing that did not tie them to any particular house. Arya's men drew their weapons and she rested a hand on her sword, but if this was to come to a fight it would be a close one. They had 10 men and she only had 7 including herself. The man at the lead wore an eye patch and an almost kindly smile. It's all right, lady, the woman said. These aren't robbers. No, the man with the eye patch said. We belong to the Brotherhood without banners. The Brotherhood, Arya repeated. I know about you. Years ago, the Lannister men were looking for all of you. They were torturing everyone they could get their hands on for information. I'm sure they were, the man said. Forgive me, but I couldn't help but overhear. Your name is Arya, yes? It is, Arya said. And before you were Arya Lannister, you were Arya Stark, the man said. I still am, Arya said. The man smiled. My name is Beric Dondarrion. I knew your father some years ago. He was a good man. Yes, he was, Arya said. I remember your name. You were at court before he died, but I thought that you had died as well. I had, Beric said, but the Lord of Light saw fit to bring me back. The Lord of Light, Arya thought. That was the god Stannis Baratheon served, and it was the god of the woman who had brought Jon back from the dead. And once your god brought you back, you stayed in the forest. Yes, Beric said, protecting the small folk. Someone has to. It's actually rather refreshing to see a lady take pity on them. A scream of pain echoed from the woods behind Arya, one of the soldiers having his fingers removed. We probably would have hanged them too. Don't give the army of the dead any more soldiers, Arya said. We need all the help we can get. Yes, I suppose that's true, Beric said. That's why we're heading to Harrenhal, to give our aid. However, we hear that Tywin Lannister is in charge there. We may not be accepted, given our history with the Crown and the Lannisters. He's working with a great many of his enemies at the moment. I doubt he'll turn you away, Arya said. However, if you worry about getting through the front gate, I can vouch for you, provided your intentions are noble. They are, my lady. Beric gave her a little bow. You are welcome to kill me again if they are not. Thank you, I will, Arya said. She glanced at her men who still stood at the ready with their weapons. It's all right, put them away. These men will be travelling with us. Thomas returned to her side, cleaning off his knife. She raised an eyebrow. Done. Yes, done, Thomas said. I would show you proof, but I did not think you would want to keep the fingers. Not particularly, no, Arya said. She turned back to the Brotherhood, scanning their men. They were all armed well enough, though they would need dragon glass weapons to be of any use against the dead. They were a strange lot, to be sure. One of them was drunk enough to be swaying a bit, and there was a giant of a man with his hood pulled up in the back of the group, peering at her from under the shadow of his cowl. There was something familiar about him. Is anything wrong, my lady? Beric asked. That man in the back, who is he? Arya asked. I would tell you his name, but I'm afraid he's a fugitive from the Lannisters, Beric said, and he's too good of a fighter to give to the noose. A sudden realization struck Arya. Few men stood quite as tall as he did, and even beneath his hood she could see some of the facial scarring. Bran's words returned to her. The Hound is alive, wandering with the Brotherhood. Sandor Clegane, she said. That's you under that hood, isn't it? For a moment the man didn't move. Then he drew back his hood, revealing his scarred face. I, surprised you remember me, girl. You killed a friend of mine, Arya said. I will never forget that. A friend of yours, Beric said. Who was he? A butcher's boy. His name was Micah, Arya said. I swore to myself a long time ago that I would pay you back for that. The Hound's lip curled into a slight snarl. Would you like to fight me for him right now? I don't think it will bring him back. Merwin aimed a crossbow at the man, his eyes narrowed. Careful how you speak to our lady. Ah yes, Lady Lannister, the Hound said. Last time I saw her she was snarling at the Lannisters like a wolf. Now it seems they tamed her. Arya smiled coolly. I'm still a wolf, Hound, and you wouldn't be the first dog I killed. Clegane, calm yourself, Beric ordered. We're not here to pick fights. He looked to Arya. I apologize for your friend, my lady. I'm sure he is not the only innocent Clegane killed, but we put him through a trial by combat for his crimes, and the gods judged him not guilty. A trial by combat tests the best fighter, Arya said. It doesn't test innocence. He won because he's strong and he knows how to use his sword. The Hound barked out a laugh. See, Dondarrion, she understands it better than any of you. Beric smiled. If you mean to try him for the murder of your friend, I understand, but perhaps that can wait until after the dead are defeated. You did say something about not giving the dead more soldiers. I did, Arya agreed. She glared at the Hound for a long moment. Keep your hood up, Hound, you won't want anyone seeing your face. He glared at her before jerking his hood back over his head. Arya exhaled, letting her anger go. In all likelihood, the Hound would die in the war to come. Then she would not have to deal with him any more. She put on a smile and turned to Mary, who had wandered back out of the house again. Well, are you ready to ride? She gave Arya a big smile and nodded, handing her things off to her mother. Then Arya took her hand and guided her toward her horse. There was no time to waste on the hound, not right now. There were still many more villages to pass before nightfall. With the dead marching closer every day, Arya needed to focus on saving lives rather than taking them. They spent the next few days in the woods, finding other families and encouraging them to join the march. By late afternoon 2 days later, Arya and her men had guided Mary's family and some others they had found to the main road. There was already a large caravan of other refugees passing by, and Arya bid Mary and her parents goodbye. "Keep following these people," she told them. "They'll reach King's Landing in a few days. It will be crowded there but safe." Mary nodded. "Thank you, lady." "Yes, thank you," the girl's father said. "We won't forget it." Arya smiled and watched them go. Then she and her men continued on to Harrenhal, along with the Brotherhood without banners. "Is there only 10 of you left?" Arya had asked. "That seems a very small number." "Hardly," Beric said. "There are many more, but we would not come all at once to Harrenhal. First we must see if we will be safe there." "You will be," Arya said. "I'll make sure of it." "You seem certain that you can convince Tywin Lannister," Beric said. "I'm a very convincing person," Arya said. Merwin coughed, hiding a smile behind his hand. The sun had nearly set when they reached Harrenhal, and it cast an almost red glow over the water of the God's Eye. All around the great black keep, tents were spread out for what seemed like miles, flying flags of countless houses, and supply carts were travelling east from Dragonstone and south from the Reach with weapons and food alike. It was amazing to see. "What a strange sight," Beric said. "Harrenhal has always been a black mark on the land, a haunted place of ghosts." He laughed once. "I don't think it's ever been seen as humanity's last hope." No, Arya thought, likely not. Tywin had a great many matters to attend to at Harrenhal, so much so that he barely had a moment alone to himself. So he was not exactly thrilled to deal with an angry Lord Edmund Serret in his tent, complaining about the fates of some of his soldiers. "3 of my people are missing 2 fingers," he said. "One of them is my nephew. They say it was Lady Arya's men who removed them." "Really, and did they say why?" Tywin asked. "Apparently when they were trying to order the evacuation, some small folk attacked them," Lord Serret said. "They were only defending themselves, but the girl judged them for crimes they didn't commit." "It must have been a fearsome group of small folk," Tywin said, "if they could strike fear into the hearts of fully armed soldiers." "I don't know how fearsome they were. I wasn't there," Lord Serret said. "No, you weren't. Neither was I, but it seems to me that the lady carried out a sentence as she saw fit." Tywin sat back in his seat. "Considering that you are my bannerman, your soldiers fall under my jurisdiction." "Your jurisdiction, yes, my lord, not hers," Lord Serret said. "She's my daughter-in-law. Before long she will be your lady. You may as well practice taking orders from her now." Lord Serret's jaw clenched. He always was a proud man from a proud house, but he feared Tywin because he knew what he had done to the Rains when they grew too ambitious. A hard word from Tywin was usually all that was needed to remind him. Before the proud lord could respond, however, the tent flap brushed aside and Arya entered. "What auspicious timing," Tywin said. "We can find out the truth of your nephew's claims right here and now, Lord Serret." Arya's eyebrows shot up. "Ah, Lord Serret, I met a few of your soldiers a few days ago." "Apparently you removed their fingers," Tywin said. "Why is that?" "Thievery," Arya said. "One of the soldiers confessed they had robbed 6 houses. I took a finger for each one. It seemed a reasonable trade." "For a few pennies stolen from small folk," Lord Serret sputtered. "Pennies to the soldiers are worth a great deal more to the victims of the crime," Arya said flatly. "And in some places the punishment for stealing is losing an entire hand. I believe I was more than generous. It's not too difficult to live without 2 fingers. She held up her right hand. "I've been doing it for a few years now." Lord Serret opened his mouth to reply, but Tywin cut him off before he could embarrass himself further. "It seems that's settled. Lady Arya carried out a more than generous sentence," Tywin said. The man opened his mouth to argue, but Tywin did not give him a chance. "You do realize, Lord Serret, what the purpose of moving the small folk south is, don't you? It's to keep the army to the north from gaining more soldiers." He stood, packing around the small table. "Which means when our men cause trouble." The small folk doubt and they resist, and they begin to think that this is all a fairy tale we've created to steal what little valuables they have left. So they stay behind. They refuse, and in a few moons they will join our enemy and march against us. Do you understand? Yes, Lord Cerrett muttered. Good, Tywin said, then keep your men in line. Lord Cerrett's lip curled and he looked like he might want to say something more, but Tywin merely narrowed his eyes a fraction and all protests died on his lips. He gave Tywin a stiff bow. Yes, my lord. He shot Arya one more withering stare which she met with a smile, then he brushed from the tent. The moment he was gone, her smile dropped and she turned back to face him. I'm sorry about that. I don't think you're particularly sorry, he said. Well, not about what I did, just that it caused trouble for you, she said. It's as you said, we need to keep the peace. We don't need soldiers acting out and making it more difficult. Tywin exhaled, circling back around his desk. Yes, I'm sure that's exactly why you did it. Her chin lifted just slightly. Well, that's the reason you care about anyway. Tywin exhaled. She was so constantly vexing, wasn't she? Yes, that's the reason I care about. I also care that you're earning a strong reputation with the lords, if not a favourable one. Well, Lord Cerrett didn't seem to like you very much, Arya said, but he listens to you. Exactly, Tywin said. You don't need to make friends with your bannermen, you only need to command their respect. Occasionally you might do both. Right, Arya threaded her fingers together. She still had a slight nervousness about her. She hadn't come to his tent just to deal with Lord Cerrett. Was there something else you needed to discuss? He asked. While I was in the woods, I came across some more people who would like to fight for the living, Arya said. But they don't have the best history with the Crown or the Lannisters. They want assurances that they won't be murdered if they come to Harrenhal to fight. And what is this group? Tywin asked. The Brotherhood Without Banners, Arya said. Gods above, her talent for finding trouble knew no equal. You ran into the Brotherhood. Just how deep into the woods did you venture? I was trying to find the people everyone else would miss, Arya said defensively. In any case, they didn't draw on me. Their leader, Beric Dondarrion, he knew my father. He seemed to think fondly of him. That wasn't a surprise. Ned Stark did have a talent for making friends, though only with people who shared his love of honour, and Beric Dondarrion was certainly one of those, unless his time in the woods had changed him. I see, and they said they wished to join the fight at Harrenhal. Yes, Arya said, provided no one tries to execute them for any past crimes. That would be a waste of good swords, Tywin said. Of course, if they try to make trouble, that would be a different story. I don't think they mean to make trouble, Arya said. They've always cared about the small folk more than anyone else. The small folk will suffer and die if we can't stop the Night King. True enough, Tywin said. Find them a place then, but they're your responsibility. If they cause any problems, that falls on you. Her mouth twitched at that, almost as if she was happy to be given the responsibility. It was such an odd sort of reaction that Tywin had not yet grown used to. Yes, my lord. In any case, I want you to stay close to Harrenhal from now on, Tywin said, circling back to sit at his desk. A raven came from King's Landing today from your brother. The army of the dead is only a few days from Winterfell. Her brow furrowed, and moving slowly or quickly. Quickly, Tywin said. They've passed a few small keeps without attacking. If they continue at this pace, they'll reach the twins within a moon's turn, likely less. In a few days, the commanders of the various forces will meet here one last time before everyone disperses. Arya let out a breath and nodded. Right, it's almost coming to an end then. There was fear in her eyes, barely noticeable but clear to him, and he knew she wasn't afraid for herself. She was thinking of her 3 brothers and her sister and her mother. It was possible she was thinking about Jaime as well, though she wouldn't admit it. She had a great deal to lose. Behind her the tent flap rustled again and a familiar face entered. Catelyn Stark. The moment Arya registered her mother's presence, she launched herself into her arms. Mother, you're here. Of course I'm here, Catelyn laughed once, holding her daughter close. Oh, Arya, it's good to see you. I can't believe it's been another year already. It has, hasn't it? Arya pulled back from her mother. How are the children? Well, and already on their way to High Garden to wait out this battle, Catelyn said. But I had to come here first. Most of my children are insisting on fighting on the front lines, so, well, I needed to see all of you first. I'm glad you're here, Arya smiled. There's so much to talk about. I imagine, Catelyn seemed to suddenly remember Tywin was present in the tent and turned, dipping into a brief curtsy. "Lord Tywin, it's a pleasure to see you again." "Somehow I doubt that, Lady Catelyn," Tywin said. "A harmless courtesy, my lord," Catelyn said, "but if you wish for me to be honest, I will oblige you." "Your courtesies do well enough," Tywin said, "though I'm sure if you had something particularly honest to say you would not ask my permission." "I would not," Catelyn agreed. "Then it's a pleasure to see you as well, my lady." Tywin glanced at Arya. "Go on, I'll find you later." Arya nodded gratefully, and with that she and her mother exited the tent, leaving Tywin alone. He exhaled, leaning back in his chair. At least Arya's mother and sister would be going south soon, and her older brothers would be in the north. That would leave only one brother for her to recklessly protect. She had a talent for brushing with death, especially when her family was involved. If he could, he would send her as far south as possible, but she would never allow that. Even if he put her in shackles, she would find her way back to the fight, so he would just have to hope that she could win one more battle. One last war for her to survive. If she could only survive this one, his legacy would be secure, and he could step away. One last war,